The names echo through history, etched into our collective memory. The Aztecs, the Maya. But their grand empires rose from foundations laid by a far older, more enigmatic people. Before the pyramids of Tenochtitlan, before the calendar of Chichen Itza, there was a culture that emerged from the mists of the Mesoamerican dawn, a civilization we now call the Olmec. They are the mother culture, and their legacy is one of profound mystery. From the earth of Mexico's tropical lowlands, they summoned colossal stoneworks that seem to defy the logic of their time. Gigantic heads, carved from volcanic basalt with an impossible artistry, stare out from a forgotten past, their features serene, their secrets locked away. But these silent monuments were not all they left behind. Scattered across their altars and stelae, carved into jade and serpentine, are messages. Glyphs and symbols that have taunted scholars for a century. For decades, the code remained unbroken. Then, in an age of new intelligence, a quantum AI was turned towards the problem. Sifting through terabytes of high-resolution scans of an ancient slab, it began to detect what human eyes had always missed: a hidden, multi-layered pattern of staggering complexity. The system it uncovered was not merely linguistic, it was conceptual. It revealed a theoretical method for storing information at a density that borders on the impossible. A blueprint for compressing 201 gigabytes of data into a single square inch. A reel of magnetic tape built on such a principle could fit in the palm of your hand, yet hold the archives of 330 modern laptops. The first coherent translation the machine produced was not a history of kings or a tally of grain. It was something else entirely. It hinted at a body of knowledge so unsettling, a perception of the world so alien, it threatens to overturn everything we thought we knew about the origins of civilization. To grasp the weight of this discovery, we must return to the moment the Olmec first emerged from the earth. When their monuments were unearthed in the early 20th century from the swamplands of southern Mexico, archaeologists believed they were looking at the artifacts of a primitive ceremonial cult. Massive basalt heads, some weighing over 40 tons. Stone altars depicting figures emerging from the underworld. Intricate slabs etched into the ground. Yet as they dug deeper, this simple explanation began to crumble. By the middle of the century, a disquieting pattern had become undeniable. Archaeologists working at Olmec sites miles apart, from San Lorenzo to La Venta to Tres Zapotes, began noticing the same symbols, repeated with ritualistic precision. The same crossed bands, the same enigmatic flame-shaped eyebrows, the same distinctive cleft heads split neatly down the center. A monumental effort began. Researchers photographed, traced, and cataloged every glyph they could find. They laid them out side by side, comparing placement, scale, and patterns of wear. Slowly, painstakingly, a grammar began to emerge. These were not random decorations. Archaeologists were forced to confront an uncomfortable possibility. The Olmec were not just carving art, they were recording information. Beliefs, authority, identity, and perhaps events from a history we have long since lost. Their world was born roughly between 1200 and 400 years before the Common Era. They inhabited the unforgiving tropical lowlands of modern-day Veracruz and Tabasco, a realm of swamps and rivers, flood-prone, suffocatingly hot, and choked with jungle. It was no place to build a city. Yet they did. Their first great center, San Lorenzo, was not a village, but an act of monumental engineering, a landscape reshaped by human will. Stone was quarried and transported over vast distances. Elite compounds were built on raised platforms, high above the common areas, and people who mastered their brutal environment to create a new kind of world. And in the heart of that world, they carved a message. A message that has waited 3,000 years for a mind, whether human or machine, capable of finally reading it. From the humid lowlands of southern Mexico, a civilization had emerged, one that sculpted stone with an almost supernatural skill. They carved colossal heads from volcanic basalt, some weighing as much as a modern truck, each face a portrait of a ruler, a dynasty, an epoch. But the age of their first great capital, San Lorenzo, was finite. As its power waned, a new center of gravity emerged from the swamplands. The city we call La Venta. Here, the Olmec vision was etched into the very landscape. Ceremonial centers were not merely built, they were aligned with a breathtaking precision, their axes oriented to the cosmos. Earthen mountains, great pyramidal mounds, rose from the flat terrain, man-made peaks reaching for the heavens. Massive stone altars, carved with scenes of rulers emerging from the underworld, were positioned not for convenience, but for ritual display, for a sacred theater of power. And in a gesture of profound piety, deep beneath the plazas, they buried offerings of unparalleled beauty. Intricate mosaics of serpentine blocks, painstakingly arranged into the forms of their gods, only to be immediately covered, hidden from all mortal eyes. This was a culture that spoke in symbols, that understood the world as a text to be read and written upon. Their lives were anchored to the earth and the water. From the fertile floodplains, they coaxed life, maize, beans, and squash, the triad that would sustain Mesoamerica for millennia. They drew sustenance from the rivers, and from distant mountains, they drew their most precious materials. Jade, the color of life-giving water, and obsidian, the volcanic glass of sacrifice, flowed through vast trade networks, connecting their heartland to the far reaches of the continent. Their rulers were not simply political leaders. They were shamans, divine conduits, intermediaries who walked between the world of the living and the realm of the spirits. Their authority was renewed through harrowing rituals of bloodletting, through sacred ball games that reenacted cosmic battles, and through shamanic journeys that shaped the destiny of their people. And through every facet of this complex existence, the same symbols endured: the snarling jaguar, the feathered serpent, the cleft-headed deity. For this pervasive influence, historians have called the Olmec the mother culture of Mesoamerica, the wellspring from which the Olmec themselves remain profoundly silent. They left behind no clear written record to explain how their society was governed, no manuscript detailing the techniques used to carve stunning monuments with ancient tools, and, most unsettling of all, no explanation for why their magnificent civilization suddenly crumbled. Their great centers were abandoned to the jungle. The monuments were not just toppled, they were systematically broken, their colossal heads deliberately defaced or ceremonially interred. This was not the slow, quiet decay of a civilization succumbing to time. This was a verdict, a ritual of termination, carefully orchestrated and brutally executed. While theories of environmental change or internal conflict abound, none fully account for the precision of the timing or the sheer intentionality of the destruction. But if the Olmec used their symbols as a structured system of communication, a form of proto-writing, then perhaps the stones themselves holds the only surviving record of what went so terribly wrong in their cities. When archaeologists unearthed an ancient stone block, its surface covered in a disturbing sequence of unknown glyphs, that very possibility became impossible to ignore. The discovery came, as it so often does, by accident. In the late 1900s, near the small village of Lomas de Tacamichapan, construction crews were clearing land for a road. their machinery struck something hard. Buried among pottery sherds and clay debris, they uncovered a flat stone slab. The location was deep within the Olmec heartland, an area archaeologists knew as the ancient sphere of influence of San Lorenzo. The slab was serpentine, a waxy greenish stone favored by Olmec artisans for ritual objects. It was modest in size, roughly that of a modern tablet, weighing about 12 kilograms. Its surface was smooth, polished, and covered in 62 distinct, incised symbols. Crucially, the slab was not found in isolation. It lay in a sealed context, surrounded by the detritus of ancient life, broken ceramic pieces, and small, hand-molded clay figurines. When these everyday objects were subjected to analysis, they provided an unambiguous time frame. The material belonged to the San Lorenzo phase, placing the burial of the stone sometime between 1200 and 900 years before the Common Era. With that confirmation, the foundations of Mesoamerican history trembled. If the slab and its script belonged to that remote period, it was older than Zapotec writing. It was centuries older than the earliest Maya inscriptions. It was, by a staggering margin, older than any confirmed writing system ever discovered in the Americas. For years after it was unearthed, the block remained a local curiosity, its profound significance unnoticed by the wider world. A message from a lost civilization, a potential key to their collapse, was hiding in plain sight, waiting for a voice to translate its silence. For years, it was an artifact studied in hushed tones, a secret held quietly by specialists working behind the scenes. Then, on the 15th of September 2006, the silence was broken. The discovery was unveiled to the world in the pages of the journal Science, under a title of breathtaking audacity, Oldest Writing in the New World. With that single, unambiguous declaration, the bedrock of American archaeology was fractured. The object at the center of this upheaval was the Cascajal Block. It bore 62 distinct signs etched into its mottled, serpentine surface. But it was their arrangement that defied all expectation. They marched across the stone in disciplined, horizontal rows, a silent rebellion against every known convention of Mesoamerican literacy. Later civilizations, the Maya, the Zapotec, would raise their stories in vertical columns. The symbols themselves were a vocabulary of ghosts. Restrained and abstract, they hinted at a world both familiar and utterly alien. There were forms that echoed the shape of plants, the whisper of a maize cob, the outline of a pineapple. Others resembled insects, captured with an almost geometric precision. They were simple outlines, stripped of all but their essential meaning. Some of these glyphs appeared again and again, a recurring chorus in a silent song. Others surfaced only once. A few, tantalizingly, reappeared in the same positions across different rows, a structural detail too deliberate to be accidental. This was not the random flourish of Ke is governed by the unyielding logic of rules. The very space between the symbols seemed to speak. They were not crowded together in a chaotic jumble, nor were they scattered at random. Instead, they moved across the stone with a steady, measured rhythm, pointing to a coherent structure, a syntax that researchers had never before encountered. It was this internal architecture that set the Cascajal Block apart, isolating it from every later Mesoamerican writing tradition. The discovery left archaeologists with an unsettling, even revolutionary possibility: that Olmec writing, the supposed mother script of the Americas, may not have influenced later civilizations at all. It may have been a brilliant, isolated experiment that blazed for a time and then, for reasons unknown, simply disappeared. But such a seismic claim was not met with universal acceptance. Skeptics insisted the symbols were not writing, but mere iconography, a collection of ritual signs, sacred images, and landmarkers meant to be seen, not read. Others raised a more troubling concern, one that struck at the heart of archaeological practice. The block had not been unearthed from the patient, layered embrace of the earth during a controlled excavation. It had been found by chance, torn from its resting place by the brute force of road construction, before anyone could document its precise position or the layers of soil that had guarded it for millennia. In archaeology, context is everything. The surrounding soil, the associated pottery shards, the very position of an object tells a story of time and purpose. Without this chapter, the block was an orphan, its true age and meaning adrift in a sea of conjecture. Any conclusions had to be drawn with extreme caution, tempered by the humbling reality of what could not be confirmed. For over a decade, the debate raged. Then, in 2019, the block was summoned from the realm of academic argument and placed under the unblinking eye of modern technology. High-resolution digital scans descended upon its surface, mapping every feature in microscopic detail. They traced the faint grooves left by the carver's tools, measured the precise depth of each incision, and charted the subtle patterns of wear accumulated over centuries. As the data poured in, a clearer picture emerged. Every symbol had been engraved with the same technique, by a confident, steady hand. There were no signs of modern tampering, no mixing of disparate styles. The block was internally consistent, a single, deliberate act of creation. Computational analysis then revealed what the human eye could not grasp: subtle, repeating sequences and non-random patterns woven through the text. The stone was not just a collection of images, it was a system. The digital evidence was undeniable. The Cascajal Block was authentic. It stands as a testament to a lost intellectual world, a system of thought that rose, flourished, and then vanished into the silence of the jungle. The Cascajal Block does not just ask us who wrote it, or when. It forces us to wonder how many other voices, how many entire libraries of stone and wood have been lost to time. A silent, humbling reminder that the history we know is merely a fragment of the story that was lived. Etched into the surface of a serpentine block, a series of distinct glyphs repeated in deliberate, structured patterns. For centuries, this stone lay dormant, a message locked in silence. But to the trained eye, this was no random collection of markings. This was the unmistakable architecture of a language, a system of communication patiently awaiting its moment of rediscovery. The Cascajal Block, as it came to be known, ignited a firestorm in the world of Mesoamerican studies. Stephen Houston, one of the leading scholars who first brought the artifact to light, advanced a revolutionary claim. The carvings revealed a system of writing, a form of literacy no one had ever dared to attribute to the Olmec. It was not the fluid, intricate script of the later Maya, with its complex phonetic and logographic elements. This was something more primal, more elemental, yet it was undeniably real. A carefully designed method for recording and preserving information. If this interpretation holds, the foundations of Mesoamerican history must be redrawn. The invention of writing in the New World would be pushed back by centuries. Its origins shifted from the familiar grounds of the Maya or the Zapotec to the far more ancient and enigmatic Olmec heartland. Literacy would not be an innovation of later empires, but a legacy inherited from the region's founding culture. Yet, the Cascajal Block remains an orphan. It stands alone, a solitary testament to a lost world of Olmec scribes. No second tablet, no corroborating text has ever emerged from the earth. This tantalizing whisper from the past is both a monumental discovery and a profound frustration. And it leaves us with the most fundamental question of all. If the Olmec were indeed capable of writing, what were these abstract symbols meant to convey? While their written language remains a ghost, their visual language speaks volumes. Across the sweltering lowlands that the Olmec once dominated, one image asserts itself with relentless authority: the jaguar. It appears again and again, a divine predator staring out from colossal stone monuments, coiled on polished jade figurines, and snarling from ceremonial masks and intricate reliefs. The symbol was carved into the very thrones of their rulers, massive stone altars, and etched onto towering stelae at sacred sites from San Lorenzo to La Venta. Wherever the Olmec left their mark, the jaguar was there, an omnipresent guardian of their world. In some carvings, the creature is rendered with breathtaking naturalism, a perfect predator of the jungle. But in others, something far stranger occurs. The animal is fused with human features, creating a disquieting hybrid, a were-jaguar. These figures share a consistent, haunting iconography, regardless of the artist or the distance separating them. They are defined by a wide, downturned mouth, often toothless, frozen in a deep snarl. Their eyes are heavy-lidded, almond-shaped, and gaze into a dimension beyond our own. And almost invariably, a deep, V-shaped cleft is cut into the crown of the head, as if the skull itself were opened to the spirit world. What makes this symbol so deeply unsettling is the cosmic power it represents. In the Olmec world, the jaguar was the apex predator, an undisputed sovereign of the jungle. It moved with equal grace through the suffocating darkness of night, the murky depths of rivers, and the impenetrable density of the forest. It was a silent hunter, a master of territories humans could only enter as intruders. For the Olmec, the jaguar was therefore the ultimate symbol of authority, of raw power, of fertility, and, most critically, of transformation. It embodied the terrifying ability to cross the sacred boundaries between human and animal, between the living and the spirit realm, between the ruler and the god. This obsession with transformation suggests the Olmec were not merely depicting the fauna of their environment. They were carving their very experiences into stone. The ritual, trance, or shamanic journeys into the spirit world. The art was not a portrait of a man, but a map of his soul's passage into the divine. And yet, another portal appears, just as consistently in their monumental art: the cave. On many of the great stone altars, believed to be the thrones of Olmec rulers, the central feature is not the king himself, but a deep, hollowed-out niche carved directly into the stone. These openings are not simple recesses. They are stylized as the gaping mouths of supernatural beings, or as gateways into the earth itself. From these dark portals, powerful figures are shown emerging, often seated cross-legged at the threshold. They are not standing in front of the stone. They are moving through it, being born from the underworld or drawing their power from its sacred depths. This space is never decorative, never an afterthought. It is the heart of the composition, the source from which the figure's authority emanates. Everything else in the carving is built around this void. In the Olmec imagination, the world was not a simple flat plane. It was layered, and the cave was the axis connecting the world of the living to the supernatural realms below. These carvings, then, are not just sculptures. They are cosmological diagrams, declarations that a ruler's power is not of this world alone, but is granted from the sacred, creative, and terrifying darkness of the earth itself. We are left to gaze into these stone portals, seeing not just the art of a lost civilization, but the enduring human quest to find meaning in a world poised between the visible and the unseen. In the deep memory of Mesoamerica, long before the rise of the Maya or the Aztec, the world was perceived through a different lens. For the Olmec, the first great civilization of this land, the earth was not a solid, impassive surface. It was a porous membrane, riddled with openings that led to other realms. Caves were the most sacred of these passages. They were understood not merely as geological formations, but as wombs of creation, places of origin where gods dwelled and ancestors emerged. They marked the fragile boundary between the world of the living and the profound, generative darkness of the underworld. To harness this primordial power, Olmec artisans performed an act of extraordinary vision. They did not simply carve stone, they transformed it. Across the humid lowlands, colossal monuments and thrones were hewn from volcanic basalt, and into their faces they carved the semblance of a cave. Stone, the most solid of materials, was made into a portal, a passage between states of being. This was not decoration, it was an act of architectural transubstantiation, turning inert matter into a living threshold. Within these stone grottos, a figure is almost always present: the ruler. The placement is deliberate, a masterstroke of political and religious theater. Seated at the mouth of the symbolic cave, the leader is visually fused with the cosmic source itself. They are no longer just a political figure, but a mediator, a shaman king poised between worlds. This human axis has the authority to commune with deities, to traverse the supernatural landscape, and to return with the knowledge and power necessary to maintain cosmic balance. The throne becomes more than a seat. It is the epicenter of the universe, and the ruler, its living conduit. This iconography of power repeats itself with haunting consistency across Olmec territory. We see them, these seated figures, framed, elevated, and enclosed within their stone niches. They are often rendered with an unnerving stillness, a profound quietude that suggests a power beyond the need for physical assertion. Archaeologists believe this posture was itself a statement. It conveyed a legitimacy that was innate, ancient, and divinely sanctioned. A power that did not need to explain or defend itself, for it was as fundamental as the stone from which it was carved. But beyond these grand statements of authority, the monuments carry another, more subtle layer of meaning. Etched onto and around the rulers is a lexicon of abstract symbols, a visual language that is easy to overlook. Flame-shaped eyebrows, enigmatic crossed bands, and heads mysteriously cleft at the center. These marks appear again and again across countless sites and on objects great and small, with a precision that feels too intentional to be incidental. They were a code, a visual grammar of the sacred. For generations, scholars have sought to decipher this silent script. Some believe these symbols are name tags for the supernatural, representations of deities or elemental forces that governed agriculture, rain, and the fate of humanity. Others propose a more abstract interpretation, that these were not beings, but concepts. The crossed bands might signify the sky or the meeting of worlds. The cleft head, a channel for divine power, or the sprouting maize that sustained them. They were ideas given form, a way to articulate concepts of authority, cosmic renewal, or the perilous journey of transformation. A compelling theory suggests the Olmec were grappling with the very nature of time. While they left behind no calendar we can read, their successors in Mesoamerica would become master astronomers, tracking celestial cycles with breathtaking accuracy. Their survival depended upon it. Perhaps in these Olmec carvings, we are seeing the genesis of that science. The symbols may not be dates, but celestial cues, markers indicating the precise season for planting, the auspicious moment for a ritual, or the alignment of stars that signaled a shift in power. It would be a clock, not of hours, but of seasons and sacred duties. This leads to another possibility, that the carvings functioned as ritual guides. In a society without widespread writing, these symbols could have been a silent liturgy, a visual sequence that instructed priests on the proper order of a ceremony. Each mark a cue for a specific chant, a prescribed movement, an offering to be made. They were a way to ensure that the ancient rites, the pathways to the gods, were passed down unchanged through generations, preserved not in text, but in the unyielding memory of stone. And yet, the political dimension can never be dismissed. These symbols may well be the keys to Olmec lineage, a map of power and inheritance. In a world without written names, authority was expressed through a shared visual code. Posture, placement, and the repetition of specific signs could declare who ruled, who was heir, and which families were bound by alliance or blood. It was an exclusive language, understood only by those within the system, reinforcing a hierarchy ordained by both earthly power and divine will. Ultimately, these silent carvings speak of a world where the political, the spiritual, and the cosmological were inseparable. Each symbol was a point of intersection, a node connecting the ruler to their ancestors, the community to its gods, and the earth to the vast, turning expanse of the sky. The Olmec did not just build monuments. They carved their entire worldview into the landscape, leaving behind a profound and enduring mystery. Their stones do not give up their secrets easily, but they remind us that every civilization, at its core, is an attempt to draw a map of existence, to find order in the chaos, and to locate humanity's place within the grand, silent architecture of the cosmos. Etched into the volcanic heart of ancient thrones, a silent cosmology unfolds. Across the great Olmec altars, a universe in 3 parts is made visible. At the summit, celestial elements speak of the sky world, a realm of gods and cosmic forces. Below, a gaping maw, often the mouth of a great earth monster, opens into the dark mysteries of the underworld. And at the very center, occupying the plane of the earth, sits the ruler, a human figure of immense authority, not merely reigning over a kingdom, but acting as the living axis holding these worlds in a fragile, sacred balance. This was more than sculpture. It was a vertical map of the universe, a declaration in stone that human power was the conduit through which the cosmos itself was ordered. In these carvings, the Olmec were not just depicting their world. They were striving to articulate the very mechanics of existence and humanity's vital place within it. Centuries would pass. The Olmec would vanish, their cities reclaimed by the relentless green of the jungle, their monuments left to slumber. Then, from the highlands of Oaxaca and the lowlands of the Yucatan, new civilizations would rise. The Zapotec and the Maya brought with them a stunning innovation. Scripts that were fully developed, structured, and breathtakingly eloquent. Their glyphs tracked the inexorable passage of time, recorded the dynastic histories of kings, and prescribed the precise execution of rituals. Yet, as scholars deciphered these intricate systems, a profound question began to surface, a question that refused to fade. Was this explosion of literacy a spontaneous creation? Or had these later cultures inherited more than just artistic motifs and religious concepts from their Olmec predecessors? Had they received the faint, fragmented echoes of a much older symbolic system? Were the enigmatic carvings of the Olmec the silent, primordial headwaters of all writing in Mesoamerica? To answer this, a new kind of archaeologist has been brought to bear upon the problem. one that operates not with a brush and trowel, but with the cold, impartial logic of algorithms. In recent years, researchers have turned to digital repetition analysis and machine learning, tools designed not to interpret meaning, but to hunt for its shadow. These systems are blind to the content of the symbols. Instead, they scan the ancient inscriptions for measurable patterns, the frequency of a given sign, its position within a sequence, and the other signs with which it consistently appears. They search for the ghost of a grammar, the mathematical echo of a language. To test the machine's acumen, it was first unleashed upon the known writing systems of Mesoamerica. The results were unmistakable. The software detected a symphony of order, a clear and undeniable grammatical behavior. It found signs that appeared in fible, non-random orders. It uncovered an underlying architecture of rules that perfectly matched the known structures of written language. The machine had proven it could recognize writing, even without understanding a single word. But when this same dispassionate analysis was applied to the Olmec monoliths, the signal changed. The silence was not absolute, but the clarity was gone. Patterns still emerged from the data, but they were of a different nature. Symbols did cluster and repeat, suggesting intention and shared meaning. Yet they lacked the strict, predictable ordering that is the very backbone of a true writing system. The Olmec carvings occupied a liminal space, more structured and systematic than mere decoration, yet far less organized and syntactically rigid than writing. The evidence pointed not to a language, but to a sophisticated symbolic code, a system that carried profound meaning, but had not yet made the final, crucial leap into linguistic representation. With these digital patterns as a guide, researchers returned to the stones themselves, meticulously comparing the Olmec corpus to the first fully realized writing system in the region, that of the Zapotec. Emerging around 500 years before the Common Era in the valley of Oaxaca, Zapotec script was no longer experimental. It was a confident, mature tool of statecraft and religion. Carved into stone monuments, painted onto tomb walls, and incised into ceramic, combining in sequences to record names, dates, and declarations of authority in a direct, decipherable way. When a Zapotec stela is placed alongside an Olmec altar, the deep divergence becomes obvious. At first glance, the artistic lineage is clear. Stylized faces, abstract geometries, and powerful animal forms seem to echo across the centuries. But their function is profoundly different. Zapotec symbols are locked into a grammatical grid. Their placement is not merely compositional, it is syntactical. To move a glyph is to change the meaning of the entire statement. The Olmec symbols, for all their power, appear to float free of such rigid constraints, their meaning derived from the icon itself, rather than its precise relationship to its neighbors. The Olmec were not illiterate. They were on the cusp of one of humanity's greatest inventions, navigating that vast and mysterious territory between image and word. Their carvings represent a system poised at the threshold, a language of pure meaning before it was bound by the laws of grammar. The stone does not reveal a lost alphabet, but something perhaps far more profound. The visible record of the moment an idea, for the very first time, began to seek the discipline of a line. Across the silent monuments of Mesoamerica, the symbols of the Olmec repeat in deliberate, almost rhythmic patterns. Yet they form no readable sentences, offering no narrative we can decipher. They are a language on the edge of utterance, a silent testament to a civilization's first attempts to conquer oblivion. Centuries later, as the great Olmec centers fell into decline, a new culture would bring this ambition to fruition. Between roughly 300 years before the Common Era and 200 years after, the Maya began to carve their own story into stone. Theirs was a system of breathtaking complexity, a rich tapestry weaving together logograms for whole words with syllabic signs that captured the very sounds of their language. With this powerful tool, they chronicled the lives of kings, the outcomes of battles, the sacred timing of rituals, and the celestial movements of the stars. They mastered time itself. And most critically, their words can be read today, their voices echoing from the past. While some Maya glyphs bear a faint, ancestral resemblance to older Olmec forms, scholars agree this was no simple inheritance. The Maya forged their own creation. What they received from their predecessors was not a script, but an idea, a worldview. The Olmec had taught them that symbols could hold authority, that duty. They had shown later cultures why to write, not how. The most compelling evidence for this transition lies in the very heartland the Olmec once occupied. Here, a successor culture emerged from the shadows, known as the Epi-Olmec. Flourishing between 300 years before the Common Era and 250 years into it, they provide here are hundreds of distinct glyphs, naming specific rulers and tracking their deeds against the precise mathematics of the long count calendar. The same system the Maya would later perfect. The Epi-Olmec did not simply replace their ancestors. They evolved from them, inheriting the same landscapes and ritual traditions. When studied closely, their glyphs reveal their lineage. Olmec motifs, now organized, standardized, and marshaled into a true system of communication. It is here, in this crucible of cultural transformation, that the enigmatic Cascajal Block finds its most natural home. Perhaps it is not a complete writing system, but a photograph of a single moment in cognitive evolution, a point where symbols were first being arranged with deliberate syntax, just before the final leap into grammar and sound. It is the fossil of an idea, capturing the instant a silent picture began to find its voice, and humanity first learned to write its memory upon the world.